Hello, and welcome to this week's Thursdays on the Stoop. Today we have Building the Haunted House with Zinnia Smith. Zinnia Smith's work is published with the Southampton Review, East, Voicemail Poems, and Peach Mag, among others. She's included in the speculative anthology Worlds in Which, edited by Fargo Nassim Tabaki. She was the 2018 recipient of Fugue's Writing Contest in Prose and a semi-finalist for both the American Shorter Fiction Writing Contest and the Ralph Angel Poetry Prize by Foundlings Press. She received a 2024 Mass Cultural Council grant for creative individuals. You can learn more at www.zinniasmith.com, which I will share in the chat in a moment. Thanks for being here. Zinnia, take it away.
Thank you so much. Welcome everybody. I'm gonna do the share screen transfer and y'all let me know if you can see these slides. Gorgeous. So welcome. Thank you, Julian. Thank you, Blue Stoop, for hosting us. We are going to discuss the haunted house in 3 parts: body, soul, and culture, or the universe. I'll share some haunted quotes for you from Edith Wharton, Gaston Bachelard, and Jamil Jan Kochai. After each section, there will be an array of writing prompts for you to choose from, so select the one that sings to you. Feel free to also take that moment to stretch your body, play some music. I don't have a soundtrack for y'all, but I trust you've got a spooky playlist lined up. And feel free to drop questions in the chat during the presentation or writing prompt time, and I will answer them while y'all are writing. And also, please feel free to add your own unique responses to these quotes. You'll hear my opinion, but please, please, please share yours in the chat. I don't want my opinion the only one archived here. Each prompt is going to be about 10 minutes, so we will do an equal amount of writing and reflection time today. So we got a lot to get into. Let's do it. Let's talk about the body and the construction of the haunted house. So as the haunted house writer, you need to insist on knowing every detail about your house, regardless if you share all these details with your reader or not. The details may become meaningful to you later on in writing the story. So let's take a look at our first short story we're going to discuss. This is All Souls by Edith Wharton. Our main character here is Sarah Claiborne, who married into a wealthy family with an estate of influence in a Connecticut town. We meet Sarah late in life, widowed and living alone, but living nobly and stubbornly, much like her house, and living with her quote-unquote loyal staff of domestic employees. After a curious interaction with a stranger on her land, Sarah falls and breaks her ankle. She is settled into her bedroom and instructed by the doctor to rest for the weekend until an X-ray machine can be brought in the coming Monday. However, Sarah wakes up in the morning to discover a great winter storm has cut the electricity, snow is still falling, and she is abandoned. The house is entirely empty, and Sarah must walk the halls of her estate on her broken ankle in an attempt to solve the mystery of where everybody disappeared to. So let's take a look at one of the opening paragraphs. The house in colonial days had been 4 square with 4 spacious rooms on the ground floor, an oak-floored hall dividing them, the usual kitchen extension at the back, and a good attic under the roof. But Jim's grandparents, when interest in the colonial began to revive in the early 80s, had added 2 wings at right angles to the south front, so that the old circle before the front door became a grassy court, enclosed on 3 sides, with a big elm in the middle. Thus, the house was turned into a roomy dwelling, in which the last 3 generations of Claibornes had exercised a large hospitality. But the architect had respected the character of the old house, and the enlargement made it more comfortable without lessening its simplicity. Okay, so I can't help but my instinct is to say that this paragraph feels dry, but I also think it's very interesting to me as it builds the world of the house. And I want y'all to give yourself permission as writers to write this amount of detail about your houses. In this moment, I want to emphasize the importance of constructing the physical house in the reader's mind. I think there is a psychological sense of nesting once we build the house around the reader's presence in the narrative, almost to the point they can imagine themselves walking through the construction alongside Sarah Claiborne. It also establishes the house as a character from the beginning, giving the details of the construction as you would a person, including appearance and history. And the history and the past is especially important in a haunted house novel because this is often where the haunting arises. There's also always this desire and moment to have like a tonal moment of rationality, which is the binary to the speculative and the supernatural. And that means it helps inform the whole definition for the haunted being. But perhaps most importantly, this paragraph enunciates the roominess of the estate, which is an important detail that will influence how Sarah moves through the grand house on her broken ankle as a solitary and lonely figure in pain. So let's look at some of that action. Suspecting that Sarah is alone, she's gotten herself out of bed and is beginning to limp through the passages of her house. And here is when we can spy a detail that helps escalate the drama of the story. She limped along the passage and on the way steadied herself by resting her hand on a radiator. It was stone cold. Yet, in that well-ordered house in winter, the central heating, though damped down at night, was never allowed to go out. And by 8 in the morning, a mellow warmth pervaded the rooms. The icy chill of the pipe startled her. It was the chauffeur who looked after the heating. So he too was involved in the mystery, whatever it was, but this only deepened the problem. So the radiator's cold here, the radiator itself, an otherwise comforting domestic object, and a very specific detail implemented by Wharton becomes essential to this narrative's escalation. The mystery itself. The domestic detail is lost to the suspicious circumstances that Sarah finds herself in, which, like many haunted house novels or narratives, has to exist in that speculation and the unknown for an extended period of time. So don't be afraid to escalate, escalate, escalate. The broad oak stairs were beautifully polished and so slippery that when she had to cling to the rail and let herself down tread by tread, and as she descended, the silence descended with her, heavier, denser, more absolute. And I think this is a beautiful application of the stairs to descend the character into the fear and the silence of the moment. And it's a beautiful embodied reflection of what it feels like to descend down the stairs on behalf of Wharton's part as a writer. These are details the reader can embody because the house is a clear construction that exists within their mind. The room was empty and every chair in its usual place. Her armchair was pushed up by the chimney, and the cold hearth was piled with the ashes of the fire at which she had warmed herself before starting on her ill-fated walk. Even her empty coffee cup stood on a table near the armchair. It was evident that the servants had not been in the room since she had left it the day before after luncheon, and suddenly the conviction entered her that, as she found the drawing room, so she would find the rest of the house, cold, orderly, and empty. So all of these details I find to be stunningly specific, and Wharton has carefully applied these object details to help construct the sense of loneliness and emphasize the break in routine here, which is perhaps the most horrifying aspect of our dear and poor Sarah's horror story, who does not have her servants to assist her, which I always find a bit funny, but makes for an excellent winter day reading. So the invitation for us then as writers to think about when was the last time you considered what it was like to walk down a hallway, and can this exercise and mindfulness benefit you as a writer? Okay, so here is our first list of writing prompts. I won't read them aloud, but feel free to drop any questions in the chat and I'll happily answer them. Choose the prompt that sings to you and we'll write for 10 minutes and then we'll go from there. And please, again, stretch, play music, make it as festive as you'd like. Eat Halloween candy, whatever you need to do. Okay, this is your gently ghostly reminder that we are 5 minutes into this writing prompt time, so you're halfway through if you want to shift your focus. Okay, y'all, I'm gonna slowly pull you back out of memory and let's get a little woo-woo and talk about the soul of houses. So let's consider this famous opening from The Haunting of Hill House. Why open the novel on daydreaming? No live organism can continue for long to exist sanely under conditions of absolute reality. Even larks and katydids are supposed by some to dream. The essence of daydreaming is important enough to the Haunted House novel that this is Jackson's first instruction: dismiss objective reality. It no longer belongs to the haunted house. The sturdiness and construction of the house is plainly stated, bricks met neatly, but what should frighten us is the soul of the house. Hill House, not sane. So as writers, we need to understand the importance of the daydream, not only in writing the haunted house, but in the practice of our work in totality. Poetry itself must speak to the soul. When and how do we understand this intimacy as writers? Is it something you actively think about and try to connect to when you create your work? In this genre, the haunted house manipulates the soul of your characters and your readers. So this Bachelard quote expresses the power of how daydreaming manipulates space. Now my aim is clear. I must show that the house is one of the greatest powers of integration for the thoughts, memories, and dreams of mankind. The binding principle in this integration is the daydream. Past, present, and future give the house different dynamisms, which often interfere, at times opposing, at others stimulating one another. So here in this quote, we also have the richness available to us within the haunted house novel when we construct this narrative, and the importance of time, memory, and emotion within this genre. There's the past, present, and future of the fictional house as a character in our story. There is the relationship between all these states of time, stimulating or opposing each other within the story. There's your character's daydream about the house at any different stage, past, present, or future. So does your character reminisce about the house? Do they hope for the house? Do they regret? Do they dream? There is your narrator's daydream about the house, if that narrator is different from your primary character. And then when you introduce more characters to your story, there are the conflicting and stimulating daydreams between each character. Each character's relationship to the house should be unique and potentially in conflict with each other. And we really see this in the whole novel of The Haunting of Hill House, because Eleanor feels more and more ostracized by the group because her relationship to the house differs from them. So this quote here by Bachelard can really become our guiding principle for writing the haunted house story. It is not a question of describing houses or enumerating their picturesque features and analyzing for which reasons they are comfortable or haunted. On the contrary, we must go beyond the problems of description, whether this description be objective or subjective, in order to attain to the primary virtues, those that reveal an attachment that is native in some way to the primary function of inhabiting. And Bachelard here uses the word native, but I prefer the word embodied because it focuses on that embodied experience of housing and inhabiting. So, how do we go about this? I think we can go about this by understanding how people read, feel, and embody poetry itself. We have to speak to the soul. So poetry is a phenomenology of the soul, an existence, a being of the soul, a consciousness of the soul. And when we read a poem, that poem possesses us entirely. And what an exciting concept for the haunted house writer who is dealing in possession. The artistry of literature does not exist alone in the page, so to say, but in your reader's soul. So how do you create the possession of the reader's mind? How do you create that effect when they disappear into your haunted house and then pick up their head from the story's pages, wondering how much time has passed since they started reading your story. That's the real challenge and goal of the writer, and something you should be thinking about when writing your stories. How do I personally understand this? I like to think about this as the combination between the physical construction of the house in the reader's mind, but then paired with the lyrical and beautiful application of adjectives to give your house a mood and an aesthetic. Adjectives. For me as a writer, I literally cannot get enough of adjectives. And this is my controversial take. I am less fearful of the moment my adjectives start diluting each other and more fearful that the elegance of my sentence might be lost when I restrain myself. So if we look at this impact of the word gloomy in this sentence alone, we can begin to understand this as writers. Do you feel a physical response in your body when you hear this word? The world is made up of adjectives because we can only ever depict the world through our subjective perception. The world is not so much a noun as an adjective. Indeed, to those who want to find the essence of a world philosophy, one could give the following advice: look for its adjective. Okay, so a lot of this sounds quite abstract, I'm sure. It's all theory-based. So can we identify this pairing of the physical construction and the possession of the soul in a paragraph? Yes, we can, and we're going to find it in Shirley Jackson. So let's look at this Hill House quote for a really powerful example of where Jackson applies important detail, but emphasizes how the evil soul or phenomenology of the house influences her character, Eleanor. "Here I am in the blue room of Hill House," she said half aloud, although it was real enough, and beyond all question, a blue room. There were blue dimity curtains over the two windows, which looked out over the roof of the veranda onto the lawn, and a blue figured rug on the floor, and a blue spread on the bed, and a blue quilt at the foot. The walls, dark woodwork to shoulder height, were blue figured paper above, with a design of tiny blue flowers, wreathed and gathered and delicate. Perhaps someone had once hoped to lighten the air of the blue room in Hill House with a dainty wallpaper, not seeing how such a hope would evaporate in Hill House, leaving only the faintest hint of its existence, like an almost inaudible echo of sobbing far away. Eleanor shook herself, turning to see the room complete. It had an unbelievable faulty design which left it chillingly wrong in all its dimensions, so that the walls seemed always in one direction a fraction longer than the eye could endure, and in another direction a fraction less than the barest possible tolerable length. "This is where they want me to sleep," Eleanor thought incredulously. What nightmares are waiting shadowed in those high corners? What breath of mindless fear will drift across my mouth? And shook herself again. Really, she told herself, really, Eleanor. So as a writer, we really want to start questioning and interrogating how the space makes your characters feel. But also, how can you create a tension between the constellation of past and present, rational and fear, objective and subjective? So when do the hauntings of the house echo themselves in the details of the house, like we see with the wallpaper here? Which brings us to prompt time. Once again, you're welcome to choose from any of the prompts we've accumulated so far, but I encourage you to look over the new prompts included here. We'll write for 10 minutes, and please put any questions or comments in the chat. Ghostly voice reminder, we're just over halfway through this writing time. Okay, please pull yourself away from your horrors. If anyone actually did prompt number one and daydreamed for 10 minutes, please let me know in the chat. I'm just super curious. Um, let's get into this now and widen the lens a little bit more. So we are going to talk about the universe. We're going to talk about culture beyond the self. So generally speaking, as the writer, as an artist, we also need to deeply understand how culture shapes us, how the universe beyond the self shapes us. In the genre of the haunted house novel, we might be inquisitive about our relationship to housing, but also understand what makes us afraid in this world. What are our own haunted histories that are coming forward in our narratives? So we'll look at a contemporary example here to understand the wider lens of the work. But this same attempt of cultural understanding can and should be applied and considered for Warden's All Souls or for your own writing. As Edward Said said in Culture and Imperialism, there's the essential connection between fiction and its historical world. And understanding that connection does not reduce or diminish the novel's value as a work of art. On the contrary, because of their worldliness, because of their complex affiliations with real setting, they are more interesting and more valuable as works of art. So this example we're going to look at is by Jamil Jan Kochai. We have a CIA agent haunting an Afghani American family through surveillance technology. You don't know why exactly you've been assigned to this particular family in this particular home in West Sacramento, California. It's not your job to wonder why. Nonetheless, after a few days, you begin to speculate that the suspect at the heart of your assignment is the father, codenamed Haji, even though you have no reason to believe that he has ever actually completed the Hajj pilgrimage to Mecca. In fact, Haji hardly leaves home at all. He spends hours at a time wandering around his house or his yard, searching for things to repair: rotted planks of wood, missing shingles, burned out bulbs, broken mowers, shattered windows, unhinged doors, until his old injuries act up and he is forced to lie down wherever he is working. And if he happens to be in the attic or the basement or in some other secluded area of the house, away from his wife and his mother and his 4 children, sometimes will allow himself to quietly mutter verses from the Quran, invocations to Allah, until his ache seems to ebb and he returns to work. What Kochai does expertly in this story is implement the use of second person and second voice, which also implements the reader as a surveyor and the haunting spirit of the family, and therefore challenges the reader's perception of these details gathered about a Muslim family. And he implements the omnipresent and omniscient narrator here, often found in haunted house novels, but with a contemporary twist because he's narrating through the act of government surveillance. And just like Wharton, we have an abundance of meaningful and carefully applied details in this story. And as the unnamed CIA agent watches the family, his soul is slowly awakened, so he becomes more and more attached to their life and well-being. Mo writes secret love poems on his laptop. His love, you hope, will save him. We witness an awakening in the narrator through this tonal change, and once again, an escalation of the soul, an escalation of the haunting, which ultimately manipulates the reader's soul alongside the narrator's progression and challenges American Islamophobia. You should update your superiors. You should advise them to abort the operation, but you won't, not now, not when Mary is about to apply to colleges, not when Mo is planning to propose, not when Marvin is making new friends on campus, not when Habibi's parents are applying for a visa to the States, not when Haji is deciding whether or not he will go through with the surgery, not when Bibi is losing touch with her brother, not when Lily is on the brink of an artistic breakthrough. There's too much left to learn. So, as writers, can we widen our lens and understand the culture and setting of our story and our time? How does our story respond to the present moment? And how does your story reflect your relationship to the past or the present? We can also be really thoughtful about who our narrators are, what tense we're writing in, what point of view we're writing in, and if they are omniscient or not. And this can be a very creative and effective manipulation implemented by the haunted house writer. So we're in our final prompt. This one we're only going to write for 5 minutes. But let's try to spend some time reflecting on widening our lens for understanding our place in setting, time, and culture. Okay, so please come back from your cultural reflections. In our remaining minutes of class, I would like to offer a poem to y'all by Mosab Abu Toha. To me, this poem really effectively expresses so many of the things I presented to y'all in this class as a way so we can better understand setting, the embodiment of inhabiting, and expresses so much about the soul of a house. I hope y'all come back to these writing prompts as a way to dive deeper into your haunted short stories, but I also invite you to spend time with this poem and reflect on its meaning, which Padre Gotuma describes as a ghost house in the podcast Poetry Unbound. And I feel like this poem just expresses how the soul of a house can exist even in the absence of construction. So I'm going to read this poem aloud. Ibrahim Abu Lugod and brother in Jaffa. The two walk toward the beach, barefoot. With his soft index finger, Ibrahim starts to draw a map of what used to be their home. No, Ibrahim, the kitchen is a little farther to the north. Oh, don't step over there. Dad was sleeping there on the couch. Tourist kids run by, flying kites. The waves hit the beach, shaded with cloud cover. The mosque on the hilltop calls for prayer. Ibrahim and his brother still argue about where their kitchen was. They both sit on the sand. Ibrahim takes out a lighter, wishes he could make tea in their kitchen for everyone on the beach. Ibrahim looks upward to what used to be their kitchen window. The mint no longer grows. Okay, I would like to say thank you everyone so much for flattering me by attending this session. You are all beautiful and kind, and this is your reminder of that fact. This final resource page is for you to review what we discussed with additional readings here, both for spookiness, but also widening your cultural lens. And there are links for sharing resources, which can be sharing with your networks or sharing with cash. I'll post these slides on my website so y'all can access them. And this session will also be posted on YouTube for y'all to review. Huge thank you to Blue Soup for hosting this event. I know they have their closing remarks as well, but I would just like to remind y'all to give back to Blue Soup for giving us this gorgeous opportunity. They have really cute stickers that include "Don't ask me about my novel." So this was a free event. You might buy yourself a little sticker from them. Or you can continue to take classes. And I would say the upcoming class, Writing Lush Settings with Nicole Young, would be a beautiful pairing for everything we've discussed today. Feel free to contact me at any time, and thank you all for being here with me today talking about spooky houses.
Oh, that was so great. I just love that. Thank you so much, Zinnia. And you actually did a really wonderful job saving me the trouble of saying a bunch of things. So I'll just say the most important stuff, which is that I'm going to share some links in the chat. The first link is to a feedback survey. We use that for a couple things. One is to get feedback about how the session went, share that with the instructors, and help everyone develop their craft and pedagogy, and help us know what did you love about it, what do you want to see from us in the future. We also use it to apply for grants, which is how we provide free events and scholarships and all those good things. So it only takes, I don't know, 2-3 minutes to do. Please fill it out. Also, fall classes. I don't even need to tell you about that. They're happening. They're great. Check them out. Upcoming events. We do this type of workshop pretty much every Thursday. Next week we'll be off because the high holiday of Halloween. But all of November is going to be special because we're doing a partnership with Penguin Random House to talk about publishing related skills like building a platform, getting your manuscript to the next stage of its life or afterlife, if we're going on theme today. So check that out. There's a weekly newsletter. That's how you can find out about all these things without having to look at our website all the time. And last but certainly not least, support Blue Stoop. If you're in a place in your life where $5 doesn't change your world, it might change ours. So check that out. Really grateful for your time and energy. Definitely sign up for more of our Thursdays on the Stoop sessions. And we also have creative co-working. So if you just want to drop in, on a Wednesday and have some community co-working time, it's totally free. Also donation optional. We'd love to see you there. So enough of my rambling. I'll get this on YouTube as soon as I can. Thanks for coming out. Have a great day and happy Halloween.
Thank you.